All right. I will call this Farmville Town Council work session order, 6 p.m., May 1st. Recognize that there is a quorum present. Welcome to all in attendance and those who are tuned in online. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Amos, Mr. Reed, Mr. Dwyer,
Here.
Mr. Parrott,
Here.
Mr. Yolen,
Here.
Mr. Hunter,
Here.
Mr. Hardy.
Here.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda as presented. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. At this time, if anyone has a declaration of personal interest concerning items on the agenda, please feel free to speak up now. Not hearing any. We will move to the first presentation by VDOT on smart scale projects. Mr. Davis?
Mayor, we have with us this evening Raina Rosado as engineer with VDOT, and she'll be speaking with you all tonight about a potential change in the Green T intersection project that was funded by Smart Scale.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. And again, my name is Raina Rosado. I am the project manager for VDOT for the Route 15 Griffin Boulevard, what is now a continuous Green T project. I'm also the assistant location design engineer, and then we have a few folks with us. That's with the residency, Brian Locker, and then project designer as well. So with that, we'll just get started. See how this works. All right. So the purpose of today, we wanted to, spoke with Scott about a month ago, actually, about this project, and we felt like it was important to come today to talk about the project, give a little history so everybody knows where we are going and where we have been, and get a little updates on some alternatives that we would like for you to consider as we go through. And you know, usually we have project day and we ask questions along the way. So as I'm presenting, if there's a question, you know, it's easier for me just to, you know, take those questions. So unless it's easier for you to do it after, but anyway, but so feel free to jump and ask a question as we go through. So so this is the intersection, so everybody is familiar with. So this is a location map of the intersection of South Main Street and Griffin Boulevard. Moton Museum is in the upper right-hand corner. Burger King is in the lower side of the page. Route 15 is a 4-lane, undivided northbound, southbound arterial with a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour. And then Griffin Boulevard is a 2-lane, undivided, eastbound minor street with a posted speed of 25 miles an hour. This was part of a corridor study done out of our planning group with Rick Youngblood back in 2020, 2019. And as part of that study, it came up that it recommended a Green T at this intersection. As said, the application was submitted in 2020. It was awarded and received district grant funds in 2020 as part of that Smart Scale application round 5. And so we've been working on developing this project. The purpose of the project is to improve mobility and safety, functionality within the Route 15 corridor. One of the other key things is really important that we minimize impacts to the Moton Museum, and then we always, you know, work to try to minimize impacts to the commercial and the residential parcels surrounding. And then really this intersection, accidents has been a big thing. So There are 15 accidents that have been identified in this location. 33% of the total crashes involved vehicles exiting the Burger King, and then another 33% of the total crashes were at the stop in the leftmost northbound lane. And then we had 2 crashes. Whoops, let's see if we can go back here. 2 crashes traveling and turning left onto Griffin Boulevard. So when we had the consultant do this review back in 2020, these were similar accidents, and we have refreshed this, so these are current data. So there still is an accident issue. And so as part of their analysis, they reviewed a couple of different options. You can see here in this table, there's quite a few. Some of these options we have eliminated from consideration. There are 8 total options, and we've eliminated 6 of the options, either because one, the cost is cost prohibitive, or it's really great impacts to right of way, and we would impact the Moton Museum and other surrounding. So the 2 alternatives that we have kind of pushed forward looking into was a conventional approach that we'll talk about today, and then looking deeper into the continuous green tea and what that means to the public and to you all as well. So again, the original scope was to, or is to do a continuous green tea at Griffin Boulevard and South Main Street, again, to improve capacity and improve lane utilization, optimize signal timings to address safety and access management deficiencies, and then improve, this project also incorporated some sidewalks and then improved that. So this is a sketch as part of the application. It's a little hard to make out all that I just described, but that was what that sketch, and you can see there, in this, our biggest concern is was the Moton Museum, and we cannot do anything. We can't move a sign, move a utility pole. We can do nothing on the Moton Museum that requires any right-of-way takes. So that really limits to what we can do when we start to develop and design a continuous green tea. Oopsie daisy, here we go. So what is a continuous green tea? I'm not sure all of you are familiar with it. So this is just a picture. It's got a couple of names, depending on where you are in the country. It could be a turbo tea, a seagull. But essentially what it is on the top side of that screen, those lanes have free flow, and the lanes going left and right, oops, let's go back again, would be controlled by a signal, and any left turns on the main thoroughfare would turn left into those slip lanes and be kind of controlled with that raised median, and then the side street as well. So there's a couple of features when thinking of considering a green tea. 1, you'd have a 3-legged intersection. 2, that there's a heavy through volume on the major street. The intersection has moderate to low left turns, and that there's no driveways, and you can see in this picture there's no driveways along the top side, so the T part of the major street. And then that there's limited pedestrians. So those are some characteristics that we look at. And so as we started to look at this project, you can see here, and I gave you guys larger scales of these drawings because these images were a little small. You can see here we attempted to lay out the green tea, and you can see there's a, does this have a pointer? No. There's an orange raised median that would run along the bottom side of the page that would channelize the left turns to turn onto Griffin or from Griffin turning onto Route 15 or South Main Street. And then from left to right, there would be a through lane that would allow the traffic to have continuous flow along that leg. And then at the top, from right to left, they would be controlled by signals and to allow the lefts from Griffin to turn or the right turners to go. This alternative has, it is a three-legged intersection. It has high flow volumes, moderate left turns. However, this does have driveways at the top of the T. There's 2 driveways at the top of the T, as well as Burger King that's to the left of the shaded crosshatched area. And then we have a pedestrian component in this intersection. So allowing pedestrians to cross here would be counter to a continuous flow. And we would likely have to figure out a safer method to either, if we leave them at the intersection, then we're putting a break in the median and having a PED signal, which then stops the continuous flow. Or we have to, what's demonstrated in this image, is a sidewalk that extends down towards Burger King and crosses the mid-block, which has its own set of safety concerns. Also in this alternative is that those 2 houses that have the entrance, they have full access. Right now they can go left, they can go right in any direction. After we're done, we have restricted. They can only go right in or right out. If there are any emergency vehicles, that may take a little time for them to get to their parcels. So as a result, and because of some of the House bills that have passed, we have assumed that these 2 parcels would be total takes because we just aren't, we feel like we have damaged them, that they could come back, those property owners could come back and say, you have damaged us, we've restricted how they can come and go from their parcel. When this application was submitted, that was not included. So those total takes were not a part of the original application.
In the original also wasn't part of that. If you remember, and just to go back to what Raina said, there was the original design, maybe not the one that was presented for Smart Scale, but had a portion of, they thought that there may be some area along the Moton area that they could use. But when that was not available to do that, it shifted that project down to those houses further than it was before.
And that is, so it's a good point, that we are restricted because of the Moton Museum. We're restricted, the only widening we can do is on the bottom half of that page towards those houses. So as a result, our current budget is 7.8, 7.9 almost, and that was what was asked for as part of the original application, and that's what's been awarded and funded. Our current, as we have developed the current project for a continuous green tea and the addition of a total take, 2 total takes, the right-of-way and utility estimate has gone up about $630,000. So again, that is something that if I'm going to just ask, if there's something that the town is, willing to put forth, that would be considered as well. Second option is a
So
more,
can we go back that just
Yep.
for a moment? So you have, with this, you have some options. You can go back and ask for additional funds from the Transportation Board, which is probably unlikely. Or two, the town would have to come up with the additional funds over what Smart Scale has, what the state has approved for funding for the project. I just wanted to show those are really the
there are
two
two
options to continue with the Green T intersection.
so, again, in an efforts to try to kind of stay within the budget and the dollars that we were given, we had gone back to the consultant to say, can we look to see if there's another alternative that ticks all the boxes that safety, mobility, pedestrians and such. And we've come with a more conventional approach. So this conventional approach will essentially work within the confines of the road. So there isn't really any road widening necessary. We would mill and overlay about 0.3 miles to be able to reallocate lanes and reassign the lanes. So we would create a left turn lane, a dedicated left turn lane at the intersection, and then yes, there would be a dedicated left turn lane to turn onto Griffin, and then a through lane continuing. We would have no medians or anything of that nature. We have a new signal, so it would be a whole new signal. The signal would also incorporate, so right now this signal does not have a phase for the residents that live at the top of the T. So this signal would incorporate that into the project, which would be it's a safety benefit to this alternative. And then, again, we can accommodate the pedestrians. The pedestrians would have the PED signals. They would require a small amount. Yep, go ahead.
Excuse me. I'm curious, I want to back up for just a second too. You referenced take earlier as far as for those two parcels. In this conventional, are you still considering the take with the conventional, or are you leaving them alone?
The only thing, and I was just about to say that, the only thing that I would need for this is a small strip of right-of-way. Because we are going to move, we're putting those signals, right now the signals are actually kind of in the sidewalk. So we would be creating a utility strip to be able to keep those utility poles. We'd have a signal pole there, so it pushes that existing sidewalk back. But all we need is, enough to grade for the sidewalk and to be able to include the space for the signal poles. So it's very minimal, and we updated the estimate for this. And you can see that the right-of-way and utilities actually went down. We've kept our utilities numbers the same for both options because utilities are kind of flexible at this point. We're so early in the design process. When you move one utility pole, you're not moving one, you're probably taking another 5 or 6 with you. So those are some of the things that we're still in the early phases of this design. So that's why we kept that. So again, where we are is we are trying to close scoping. Scoping closes in what our goal is in June. But with that, what I need would be a decision as to if we want to go with a conventional approach or we want to continue with the green tea approach. And then if you did decide to go with the conventional approach, that would require a change to the Smart Scale scope. We have spoken to the change committee, and there isn't any issues that they have with our recommendations at this point. So really, this was one of the other reasons Scott brought me here, is to share it with you all and let you all learn about it and ask questions, and, you know, I can help you make a decision, so.
So what you're saying is if there was a change to the conventional, it would probably be not a very bumpy road to get there.
No, it
No.
would not be a very bumpy road to get there. And the other thing about the conventional approach is it's a more direct. I mean, it's mill and overlay, so the development of those plans can happen much quicker. I mean, I'm going to say the heavier lift is the design of the signal, and that's not even that heavy of a lift, so.
As far as pedestrian traffic on the conventional, it stays relatively the same.
Stays relatively the same, yep.
So is this our best option as for safety?
Say that again?
Is this our best option as for safety?
So they both actually address safety in this same way. I did not mention it, but let me give it just a comparison. So the green tea will give you a delay. Once you put it in there, in the PM, the afternoon is the worst out of the two. The delay is 27 seconds with a green tea. With the conventional, it's 22 seconds. So they're very comparable as far as projects go. So I mean, they both address the same safety. They address pedestrians. They both address the operations, have the accidents with the left turns by giving them a dedicated left. So, you know, really, they are identical. The only difference is that raised median. And one of the other things that, you know, as we were reviewing it and talking about it, is with that property that is currently residential for the green tea, but that property that we were talking about as a total take, but it's currently residential. If that were, say, to be rezoned commercial, I think developing that parcel could potentially be difficult, because now you know, whoever comes in has got to be okay with a right in and a right out only. So those are some of the, I guess
one
pluses
of,
and minuses with each alternative.
go ahead, I'll ask in a second.
I was just gonna make a point. It's not, other than this out here where Putney, Redford, and Main Street are, it's a four-way intersection. Take out Putney. When you're coming north on Main Street, it's just like that intersection. The left turn only into Longwood, and you go straight in the right lane. That's exactly what this will be on Main Street at Griffin Boulevard. Just to help you,
As a
Picture.
conventional.
yeah.
My thought was with the green tea, that's gonna probably remedy some of the Burger King coming out. I think you said it was 33%, 5 accidents. That would remedy some of those. But then, if I was Burger King, I would probably freak out because people can't turn left out of Burger King.
And Burger King would be, you know, one of those entrances that the median does extend beyond one of the existing entrances. So again, they could say that we have damaged them and that they're entitled to something.
I get that. That's something I thought
Yeah.
about. And the other one, and like I said, I know everybody drives through here all the time. With the first house that's residence that's listed as on there right next to Burger King, I know everybody parks right in front of that house. And I know you take 5 feet away, and I don't know whether there's going to be room to park. They may give us the same hard time based
Well,
on that.
And we have looked at that area because we noticed when we went on our site visits that they do use that as a parking area. So that would be part of trying the design would try to incorporate something that could accommodate a parking space. I think the other thing it looked like that there's maybe handicap ramp or something there. So again, that would be part of the design process and getting more into, how that parcel functions. And trying to do our best to accommodate, maybe it's a retaining wall, there's already a retaining wall there, but pushing that out. The other thing is that we do have some flexibilities. Right now, we're showing a 4-foot buffer, which is the required amount. But we have flexibilities with that, some design flexibilities that possibly we can make that a little smaller to still be able to accommodate the signal pole and all the other moving parts that we're trying to work around. So those are all things that we are aware of and have considered what options we might have.
And one last thing, just for my visual, would the concrete median strictly be a concrete median, or would it have the, the little orange tube looking things
No,
there
it
to
would
prevent
be-
people from
No, it would be.
crossing over?
Yeah, it would be a concrete.
Just
a
concrete?
Concrete median.
I've got a question, please. On the convention, I'm looking at this conventional alternative. Is that the conventional option, correct? Okay. One thing I just can't, so stoplight's going to be remaining. As you're coming up Griffin Boulevard to make a right on the South Main Street, is that going to be still not a right on red, or?
That's still, what the designers have looked at is that they're looking to optimize and to be able to get the best flow through there. So I don't know that that's completely off of the table, but we're still so early in the design. And I guess, and maybe I misunderstood when I started the project, the right turn lane, we took it as there was a concern with the right turn lane, but on the Moton side, but is it both, or is it, because what our analysis is showing that it doesn't require a right turn lane. Putting a right turn lane would be kind of tricky, again, because we only have a little bit of right of way in there to work in, and so we could never fully get a full turn lane in there.
So that turn would not really be enhanced anyway by, that right-hand turn off of Griffin onto South Main would not be enhanced by this?
Again, I can't say that it's not,
Okay,
because
I understand.
I just
That's
don't
fine.
know that much about we haven't gotten that far down the design of the signal yet. So.
Okay, fair
But if
enough.
that was something that you all, was important, then I could take that back to the designers and
Thank you.
work into that.
One last question for you. I know that it was said earlier that these were the only two options we had. My question is there not any type of other available funding from a safety aspect or something to where we could take those two parcels of land? You would be able to you'd eliminate your Burger King completely, because you could come and go out, make it a four-way intersection if you took those two pieces of property. And I'm just talking. I don't know enough as far as this is concerned.
Well, the take on the green tea isn't for Burger King. It's for the
Oh, I
two
realize,
houses.
I realize that, but it would also open up the option to where you could cut off that entrance and exit and make it come into a signal light to where you take a right to go into their parking lot.
So basically, creating a four-way intersection.
Yes.
Rather than a
Right.
three-legged intersection.
And I'm just talking. I'm just asking.
And I guess anything is always possible if.
That would be contingent upon us asking for additional money from the project.
Yeah, and again, I think this project was put in here for a specific scope. And I think if we started going too far off.
I'd be shying away from the original intent.
Yeah. So, the roundabout, which is it was an option that, really kind of ticked a lot of boxes, but a roundabout would take impact a lot. And the museum probably being one of those things as far as, and also probably the Burger King, maybe the two houses. I mean, to put a foot, so those are things why we eliminated them, because that was just way too much impact. And really not what we thought you all would.
Your cost estimate on the conventional, we had something similar to this where we were looking at something way out. This is what, 2028? That cost estimate could be significantly higher by 2028?
This is inflated.
It's inflated,
So
okay.
includes inflation. And actually, I do think that once we can get a little bit more into the design, I like to feel like that number could go down. I mean, especially if we can minimize impacts to utilities, drainage. If we're staying within the curb lines, impacts are really very minimal. Maybe the only thing that I can see as a drainage impact would be if there was an inlet where a curb cut needed to go and it needed to shift or something like that. But so these numbers we have been very conservative with our numbers.
What's your decision timeline? When?
So said the scoping closes at the end of June. What next steps that we would like to see is, if you would like to go with the conventional, then we would need a resolution stating such. Or if you wish to stay with the green tea, then we will stay with the green tea and we'll push forward with
When
it.
would be best for you to have that information?
If I think you guys meet
Next week.
So if we could have a resolution by next week, that would be ideal, to be able to, then I could take that to the change committee and, we could be able to hit that June target date.
And so one of the big things is the big number, 630K, and whether or not you ask for the unlikely and then, or you swallow it yourself or move on to the conventional.
Yeah, and I guess, and you all know your town and really how people will respond to this innovative intersection. So
In your inflation figure on the conventional that we're looking at, are you factoring in the possibility of Burger King asking for concessions?
yeah, that is part of that right-of-way number.
Good. Just was checking.
All right, any other additional questions before we get to mull it over for the next week? All right, thank you very much.
Raina, you all will have a resolution that you
Yeah,
will provide us that usually VDOT has a
a template.
template that you all like to have.
Yep.
For-
We can I can send you that. No
Thank
problem.
you.
Do we have any other discussion on the green tea versus conventional at the moment?
I really like Tommy's idea, but I know it's kind of out of the way. But, I know, if it's not feasible, not feasible, not feasible, then but I do like your idea, Tommy. Good job, thanks.
Tommy's idea would, in essence, what Raina's saying is, we would have to forfeit the grant that the funding that we've gotten through the Smart Scale project and then put in for a new scope project.
Right.
So we would start all over, and that would be funded about 2033.
Yeah, and I mean, because we're going through this round of Smart Scale right now, and that application process is closed, so, you're waiting another year and a half.
I will say, I think with the conventional, it's at least, as Mr. Davis put, it's at least an intersection that people are accustomed to because they interact with a similar one right down the street. My first initial impression when you splashed the satellite image up was, I had like thoughts of that intersection at 307 and like the confusion and all of that. And it was like, oh, I don't know if I want to create that level, because then you also have the added consideration, as you said, of what do we do with the pedestrians at that point? Where are they going? Are they then moving up and crossing 4 lanes up the road somewhere where there's not a light? Or are they waiting to get to the next light?
Or are they just risking it?
Right, or are they just making a run for
Make
it?
a run for
Right,
it
yeah.
and we've been out there a couple of times, and it's clear, that there are pedestrians, because we saw one come from CVS from that side all the way to Burger King. So we know that that's a destination, that the Burger King is a place that somebody's going to go. So.
All right. Any other discussion at this time? Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Thanks. All right, next up is Ms. Julie Moore with the finance report.
Good evening. You have the March charts and reports in front of you. This is the 9th month of the budget year, so we're almost at the end. When you look at revenue compared to the budget, we should be about 75%. But again, we're slightly below that, and there's a couple of reasons. One is that there's some revenue that we haven't reported yet, and we probably won't to the end of the year, and that's the ARPA money. And also, there's some items that are budgeted that I've explained in the past that aren't in true revenue. So according to accounting principles, we can't recognize those. So that's another difference in it. When you look at revenue compared to the previous year, though, we're above where we were last year in every fund but the airport fund. And again, last year they had a big project going on, so they got reimbursements, and we don't have that this year. Expenses are well below the 75%. There's still a few departments that are slightly over, but by the end of the year they will be below, because you'll see each month they're shrinking. It's getting smaller. And when you look at expenses compared to prior year, we're slightly above last year, but again, that's because of some big purchases we've made this year, like the splash pad. We've had an ABM payment, ARPA purchases, and then the transportation fund got 2 buses this year. So it's just things that we didn't have last year, and that's why we're up compared to last year. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Moore at this time? Thanks. All right, next item on the agenda is discussion of land bank entity and receivership for condemnable properties. Ordinance number 230. Mr. Davis?
Mayor, this is an item that the discussion started actually with Councilman Yolen and an individual that he knows that has done this in the past, not in Virginia, but in other states. And he's with us here tonight, Michael McCullough. And I'm going to introduce Mike in just a second, but I wanted to touch on, he's going to explain the details of it, of how the process works. I'm just going to touch on the ordinance that he and Gary Elder, our town attorney, worked on together in the state code that authorizes the town to adopt an ordinance to establish a land bank entity. It's the code sections it's in chapter 75. It's in 15.2, which is pretty much everything that we primarily do, because 15.2 is county, cities, and towns in the Code of Virginia. And Chapter 75 is about Land Bank Entities Act. And the main 2 provisions in that is 7501, which talks about the creation of land bank entities by localities and what their purposes are. So the purposes are for assisting with a locality to address vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent properties, which a lot of those fall into those that are in ill repair properties that aren't not being maintained. And then, so in that, it allows localities to create their own, or if you skip all the way to the end, 7512, it allows you to adopt in your ordinance from a public hearing, to designate a planning district commission or an existing nonprofit entity in its governing board to carry out the functions of the land bank entity, which is a lot more simple than us creating an actual land bank entity ourselves. And so in that discussion, Mr. McCulloch has done this before, and I think in conversations with him, the town attorney, and Mr. Yolen was there, you know, our job really doesn't change in this role of if this is adopted, in that we're still going to look for properties that are not maintaining the way that they should be maintained. We would go out and we would condemn them like we have in the past. This is just another option other than the town going from condemnation to then taking and tearing it down and then putting a lien on the property to get reimbursed. In that the land bank, and I'm getting a little bit into what Mike's going to talk about, would actually come in the picture and actually fix up the property. And so I'm going to just touch on that for right now, but from a town standpoint, from our standpoint, it really does not change the business that we do. You've heard me say this about other things before. When Adam brought it to me, I said, it's another tool. So we'll have another optional tool to use in our toolbox if it's available for us to do. It really does not affect us in a negative way at all. But I'll turn it over to Mike, if you don't mind, Mayor, to let him share how that process works of once we condemn a piece of property, or if it's foreign tax lien and uncollectible, those types of things, how a receivership works and how the land bank works from that receivership. Mike?
Hey, Scott. I'm Mike McCullough. I am an attorney by trade. I'm also the president of the Virginia Receivership Group.
Could you just raise the mic up a little bit? Yeah, you have to
Is that
talk
better?
direct into it.
Is that better? Thank you. I'm the president of the Virginia Receivership Group, which is a for-profit company, and of the Commonwealth Land Bank of Virginia, which is a nonprofit. And the process that we're talking about here is the use of a land bank to address blighted property. As you all know from what you do, that there are vacant, abandoned, tax delinquent, derelict and blighted properties. These are all defined terms in the code, exist in the town of Farmville. And they cause problems. They cause significant problems to the surrounding neighborhoods and to the town at large. As nearby homes and businesses lose value, housing markets erode, tax revenues are decreased, public health, safety, and welfare are endangered, and the calls and crime exists. Calls for crime and responding to crime increase in areas around nuisance properties. And the taxpayer, of course, has to pay money in response to all of this stuff. So what is the process for the use of a receiver? Well, the town receives complaints of nuisance and or of building code violations. Your code enforcement people are the starting point for this. Those complaints come in either from neighbors or by virtue of what the code enforcement is finding themselves. The code enforcement people inspect, confirm violations, take pictures, issue notices of violation to the owner with deadlines to respond. And as you probably know, despite the best efforts of code enforcement, oftentimes those notices are ignored, fines are imposed, they're levied, but the owner may not be found, may ignore the situation, and the problem continues. It continues to exist. Of course, if the notices are successful and the property is remediated, that's the end of the process, and the tool of code enforcement and giving notices has functioned as it's supposed to, and that's the end of it. But if the inspection shows that there had been no remediation or inadequate remediation, bringing the property up to code, that's where the receivership remedy comes into play. The town would then file a suit against the owner for injunctive relief and for the appointment of a receiver. And upon appointment by the court, the receiver, who acts for the court as an officer of the court, reports to the court, establishes a separate bank account for the property, gets an estimate of repair, prepares an abatement plan and presents that to the court, enters into contracts with those who will be making the repairs, contracts with people from the city, remediates the property, makes monthly reports again to the judge, and successfully completes the remediation plan. As I say, the receiver is appointed by the court and upon the recommendation of the town. All costs associated with this remediation are paid by the receiver as they are incurred. The reason for that is what's known as a super priority lien. The town has no expense in this other than whatever attorney's fees were involved in the issuance of the complaint and certainly the issuance of the original complaint for the appointment of a receiver. And those fees are recoverable out of final award. But all the costs of repair, all of the expenses of repair, as well as the receiver's fees, become a lien on the property. It's what's known as an NREM proceeding. The property itself is a party to the lawsuit. And by virtue of a favorable statute here in Virginia and in some other states, I believe I've heard 22 states have a similar statute, including California and state of Tennessee, certainly Virginia, Michigan, Wisconsin. The lien that is imposed on the property becomes a super priority lien, meaning it goes to the top of the list above any and all financing or other debt on the property and is co-equal with taxes, with the property taxes. So at the conclusion of the remediation process, the owner who ignored his obligations to remediate the property originally is presented with a bill. And the bill is the cost of the remediation, all the repairs that were done, the costs of the receiver's fees, as well as any attorney's fees of the city, and has an opportunity to pay that bill. And if the owner does not pay it, the property can be sold at auction like a tax sale, and those fees are paid, are awarded out of the sale of the property. Again, all this is done under the auspices of the court. The owner can pay off the lien, the receiver, or the property can be sold at auction. The property pays all costs of this remediation process. That's how it works. It's working well in other places. It hasn't been done in Virginia yet. Despite this super priority lien, this last weekend I presented, I attended the local government of attorneys conference in Richmond, where over 200 local government attorneys were present, and presented this receivership remedy to them. and eyes were opened that this is something this good can actually work, as it has worked in other places. So I met with Scott and Gary Elder. A resolution has been drafted and presented to you for your consideration to appoint the Commonwealth Land Bank as the receiver for the town of Farmville. And I know from my first meeting with Scott and code enforcement that when you have these conversations, it always is the case that people start thinking about specific properties. Would this work here? Would this work there? Would this work there? And I know you have some properties that we could get working on right away. So, happy to answer any questions you have.
I just want to point out one thing that is different, I think, in Virginia that Mike and I talked about is this doesn't work for commercial properties. It has to have a residential component for this to work. You can't take just a building downtown that had no residential component to it and use this method. It's about residential property.
We do have, you and I talked about some mixed-use properties and the definition of dwelling. And if there's a dwelling in the property, then it qualifies for the receivership remedy, even if there's also a commercial use or even a primary commercial use. So.
Any questions at this time?
Yeah, I like this, and Adam and I have talked about this a bunch. Is it only repair, or is it repair or demo? Whatever's necessary, because I mean, some obviously can't be repaired.
Indeed. The recommendation might be on a given property that you should demo it. Let me explain too the financing for this. It's private financing. These are hard money lenders who will lend against a property as an as-built basis rather than as it is today, as finished. The interest rate's a little bit higher, but they'll take a look at a property and determine what is its value now, what would it be worth upon completion, and they'll lend against that money. Not every property will qualify because it has to make sense financially. You don't remediate a property that can't sustain the cost of remediation. So that would be a situation where you might demo the property or a partial remediation. So not every property is credit worthy in the sense to a lender. But again, no cost to the city whatsoever.
One more thing, and this is kind of a do they have to be vacant, or what if they have a tenant in there, and if it's the owner themselves, or multiple owners?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Buildings can certainly qualify, and as part of the plan that would be presented to the judge, you would find suitable housing for the tenants for as long as the plan so long as it would take to remediate the property. And again, those costs would be part of the ultimate award. So if it's a 10-unit apartment building and maybe you have 15 or 20 people in it, you would find housing for those people, maybe in a hotel or motel or other apartment building, and you'd pay for that. And that would then be borne by the owner at the conclusion of the remediation.
If the property is not deemed worthy of renovation and it's torn down, what happens to the lot at that point?
It's the same as we do now. We already do that. We already condemn it.
The town
We
takes
tear
over
it, we sell it. I mean, the land bank wouldn't probably get involved in a demo unless the sale of the property is of great value. We would just go back to our traditional method tearing it down and putting a tax lien on the property.
The land bank would be your partners in this, and we would have conversations about what's the best approach on a specific parcel of land. It may very well be that there are times where it has to be demoed. That's the right thing to do. I know that oftentimes properties are sold in tax sales after 2 years, and maybe that property becomes owned by the city and is held for some future development, or sold to third parties.
So you're saying the financing is private investors? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. And so they're, of course, looking for a return on investment, so it's
They
got to be
are.
worthwhile.
They are.
Yeah. Why do you think this hasn't happened in Virginia yet, even though it's been on the books?
I have no idea. I must confess, I moved here a year ago to get married, and so I don't have the experience. I'll tell you, at this conference last week, so many people who practice in this area didn't know about the remedy, weren't aware of what it was. I think I've seen, I think I found 3 land banks currently in the state of Virginia, and they're used essentially for holding a property during a redevelopment process, for example, but not this remedy. It's been done over 300 times in California. It's currently so popular in the state of Tennessee that the University of Memphis has formed a clinical program for law students who are out filing these programs and getting into court while acting as receivers. It's pretty good stuff.
I guess that was, that from my limited reading, it seemed like there was land acquisition, but that's based off appreciation and a extended period of time. You're kind of waiting, right? Versus this is you're looking at a quicker turn.
You are.
Yeah.
Part of the plan is 3 months, 6 months, depending on the construction trades and permitting to the extent it becomes necessary.
Would, say the resolution went through, would council have any other touch points to this afterwards? No. Okay.
Can you,
No, it would have to be a public hearing, so this would be, if you all agree tonight to move forward, then we would put it on a public hearing for the regular meeting in June.
I guess my point was if they found a property they wanted to take on, they wouldn't then come before this body. It's once it's set in place in the ordinance, then they're off and running.
Our staff, as we do with anything else that's, once you've approved it, we would handle it from there.
Yes.
I think I understand the players in this. I mean, I see what town seems to benefit from this, and the lenders, investors could benefit from this. Hopefully they would. So the Commonwealth Land Bank, what does the land bank get out of this?
It's a nonprofit. It doesn't make any money at all. It's
Just for
a
the-
creature of statute. The fees that are awarded for the actions, the activities of the land bank, would pass through to the Virginia Receivership Group, my company, which is a for-profit, so that I can pay my staff and pay myself a fair rate of return. But that's how I earn fees by submitting my bills to the court, and the court reviews them and approves them, and isn't going to approve an unreasonable fee.
Any other questions at this time from anyone? Not here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Next item on the agenda is discussion of delinquent meals tax policy. This seems to have been a popular subject a little to our east. What do you got for us, Ms. Moore?
So you have a draft meals tax policy. I think my goal is to bring you a new policy for the next couple of months because we just need structure. We want to make sure that we are, we have a guidance to know like when we need to do each step that, we're allowed to do by the our ordinance and the state code. So we just set out some specific guidelines for when you get behind. We'll make a phone call, send a letter, then we'll send it to Gary. He'll send a letter, and then it goes to the police. Because we want people to understand that, you know, they need to take mills tax seriously since it's not their money anyways. It's the town's money. So
Do you have any questions for Ms. Moore at this time?
This has been reviewed by the town attorney, and he had no changes.
Is it a current issue?
we have like one or two every month that seems to lag behind, and we just want to have structure and to know that in the future, if you know we do run into an issue, we know how we need to proceed.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Not hearing any. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is, based off previous conversations, discussion on conditional use permits. Mr. Davis?
Mayor, we are coming back to you to talk about, the latest discussion was conditional use permits about, it involved, the original topic, I don't know what we were talking, I can't remember exactly what we were discussing, but then the topic was brought up by Mr. Reed on that topic that I can't remember, of conditional use about the ability for mobile, for food trucks, which in our ordinance we call mobile restaurants. So, as you know, for me, we spoke a little bit about it, but I like to speak about things once I know about it that I can give you information. And I gave you some false information, not intentionally, because if we weren't prepared for that discussion that evening. That discussion evolved into food trucks at a person's house for a birthday party. So let me clarify that piece for you first. If you look in the standards section for different uses, one of them being a mobile food truck, mobile restaurant. One of the standards is that, I just had it. In essence, a person that is having it for their birthday party is more, it's not, I just had it this morning before I came in here. The requirements of this section shall not apply to mobile restaurant vendors at catered events, events where the food is not sold through individual sales, but provided to a group pursuant to a catering contract with a single payer. So in other words, if you're having a get-together at your house and you want XYZ food truck at your house, you're not going to make the people that come buy the food that you're providing. This does not apply. So just for the record now that we're prepared, is that a birthday party is not, you don't have to get a conditional use permit for that. It's when you're doing business and selling to the public that it is, that we're really talking about. So to go from there, I wanted to clear that up before, because I thought that might be in the conversation. Adam's good. Yeah, that's right. Adam, a few years ago when you did that, you were not in violation, I'm proud to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Mr. Hunter can have a birthday party at the house and have a food truck. The definition for mobile restaurant is a readily movable wheeled cart, trailer, or vehicle designed and equipped for the preparing, serving, and/or selling of food and operated at temporary locations. This definition shall include food trucks, food trailers, food carts, and shall not apply to ice cream trucks. Going to the conditional use permit part. It's really about, the discussion came about one location in town that is actually zoned residential. And when, there, Ashley is in here. When Ashley and I were looking at this and talking about it, we looked at conditional use permits from the purpose of, when these are approved, they actually run with the land, not the owner. It's the land that it runs with. So if another owner comes, they have the same opportunity. Now, we can set conditions about when it can be operational and all those types of things. But for this piece of property, and in general, we'd like to suggest that the council look at rezoning the properties on Griffin Boulevard, a portion. And the reason I say that is because from, and here's a diagram, from the current zoning of Griffin, from High Street to Redford Street, if you notice, they're marked in red that we're looking at. Across High Street is R3 and R1, and then the rest of it's the university. And the portion closest to High Street is actually going to be taken here soon, and the roundabout's going there. So that's not even an issue. So you're looking at the bigger parcel to the left, R1, that's in red, and then that's a parking lot. You keep moving down, that's a parking lot. As you move down further, all the way to Edmond Street, you'll see across the street is R3 on that side of Griffin Boulevard. And within that area, there's 25 total parcels. 9 are owned by Longwood, 1 single-family dwelling, 3 single-family dwellings that are rental, 1 triplex, which I mean, obviously that got in there at some point in time, 2 vacant lots. There's a student Baptist center, a barber shop, a daycare, a funeral home, a parking lot, and lodge of some of the uses. So if you look at, when you look at from a zoning standpoint of what R3 allows, some of this already fits in that doesn't fit in R1 that it's zoned now. But we would still suggest that you use a conditional use permit in the R3. Leaving it R1 with a conditional use permit really opens it up to anywhere else in town in other neighborhoods. So, you know, I don't want to I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to look at adding a conditional use permit for an R1 neighborhood when there's really no need in an R1 neighborhood. Because if you're having your birthday party, I mean, that's when it came up. But there's no other time other than this that I can think of that you would allow somebody to put a mobile restaurant in their yard for the public to come buy food from.
In R1.
In R1. In R3, where it's a light, it's higher usage of residential and lighter usage commercial, right? Some commercial along that corridor. It makes sense to make it conditional for a mobile food truck there because you have parking lots, you have barber shops, you have a funeral home, you have other businesses that are low-impact businesses. So our suggestion is that we look at rezoning the parcels that you see in red to R3, and then also making a change in the zoning ordinance to where in R3 you can have a conditional use permit for mobile restaurants. Now, I will also tell you the other pro for this is in the R3, if you go all the way to Edmond Street, is there's some other people that have come before you that would like to do some things that weren't able to do it before. And now it would be by right. So I think it resolves some of the things that you were talking about wanting to try to do, and you're really not changing. We're not spot zoning because R3 is already on the other side of the road and across High Street in a portion. So you're not doing something that we can't do, and I think it fits to Edmonds. Beyond Edmonds, you have a few more single-family homes, and it probably does not make sense to go past Edmonds at this point.
Mr. Reed opened up a big box.
So you're suggesting rezoning all in the red outline to all of those lots to R3?
All the ones that front Griffin Boulevard. Not Hill Street, not Watkins Street, or Williams Way. We need to change that on the GIS. Just the ones that front Griffin Boulevard.
You just got empty lots there. You know, you just empty lots, and I think.
When you said by right, switching it to R3 to by right, does that still include conditional use permits? I want.
By right means you don't need anything. It's by right. If you own that property, that's what you can use it for.
So where does the conditional use permit come through that you were talking about?
You would still need it for R3 for a mobile restaurant. But it makes more sense there than in R1. And just to give you an idea of what is already allowed in R3 by right, other than houses. Conditional use, there's a lot more conditional use like public religious assemblies, those types of things, but by right in the commercial side, actually, they're conditional as well. I take that back. Daycare center, family home daycare, home occupations are by right. Home occupations B are conditional. Hospitals are conditional. Life care facilities conditional. Nursing home, general office is conditional. Medical office is conditional. Personal improvement services, personal services, the barbershop. By right would be a short-term rental business, so you could have something that is like a Airbnb. Specialty food shop would be allowed, and when I say specialty food shop, that's defined as like only for coffee, only for ice cream, those types of things. It's not things that are. It's not a full-fledged restaurant like on Main Street. So I think, like I said, it's lower scale neighborhood convenience stores by right. It opens that corridor for I think it's more in line with what the other side of the street is and what's trying to be achieved. And what some of the uses are already there.
And had been there before.
I I think it's a good idea. The only thing that concerns me would be what the folks that are south of Edmund Street would be, they're going to be indirectly impacted by any change potentially, and whether or not, what their sentiment might be on it.
Well, they're already impacted across the street because it's Longwood and R3 already.
My thought would be the ones that are on Hill Street, how would they be impacted? And I don't know.
Well, the ones on Hill Street, there's already houses there. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about to the rear of them.
Their impact based on the changes. I'm not trying to.
I was going to say most of those are rentals probably on Hill Street at Redford in school. Those aren't homeowners technically most of the time right now.
Well, and there would be ample time to hear from.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got to have a public hearing. I mean, this has to, if you all agree with this direction, we would take this to the Planning Commission. They would have a public hearing. All these people have to be notified. They'll have a hearing. They will make their recommendation to you. There'll be another public hearing for you all. I mean, and this isn't a quick fix. I mean, we're talking, this will be summertime type thing before this is ever complete.
I think we need to just start the process.
If there's a general consensus, I would say, yeah, let's start rolling. It seems like there's a general consensus. All right. Two hands. There you go, Mr. Davis. Look at that little side conversation turned into something. Yep. You got anything else for us on that?
Not on that.
Okay. Next up, updates for the April Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Davis?
Yes. So the first one is three things. The fence ordinance, it needs to be revised a little bit. One of the things is the fence needs to be removed. The word fence needs to be removed from the definition of a structure, because in our definitions in our zoning ordinance of structure, it includes a fence, and it really shouldn't. Fence should have its own definition. So we'll be needing to make that change in the zoning ordinance. And we need to articulate better after that, because it won't be a structure that where the front line of a structure is located. In other words, it's traditionally at the corner of the structure, at the front ends, that would identify exactly the location of where the shorter fence can be in the front and then in the rear. In other words, the language needs to be so that people don't think it has to meet the setback, because the setback is where the house is. Then you would never be able to have a fence. So the whole purpose is that it just cannot be in the right of way or in a sight distance. And then it would be a lower level in the front and a taller level fence in the rear. So there needs to be some work on that. The commission didn't like the term facility in the sidewalk ordinance. So in it says that it would be lead to the facility. So we're changing the word facility to structure, because structure is what is defined in the zoning. They wanted building, but we're going to use structure because structure is actually defined. They wanted to add the size of the sidewalk to the structure of 5 feet. So we're going to do that and bring it back. The only other issue was that the Planning Commission approved with how was it worded? They recommended the solar project with the what was the exact wording, Ashley?
Subject to approval from the town attorney.
From the town attorney, yeah, thank you.
With respect to the compliance with the 2232.
Yeah, so the question of 2232 is having to do with referencing to a state code, which is 15.2-15, which is 15.2-2232, which talks about the comprehensive plan. Mr. Elder and the solar company's attorney agree that with a siting agreement, if the town council agrees to a siting agreement, that would be approved by council. That would deem the project in compliance to 15.2-2316.9C, and I would issue a certificate of substantial compliance from me. And just to give you an idea, what a certificate of compliance is, what's been drafted. If you don't mind, I'll read it just so you have an idea. And then I'll give you the code sections of why this makes sense. So the certificate of substantial compliance says, in regards to Hybrid Solar LLC, proposal to develop, install, build, and operate ground-mounted solar photovoltaic electric generating facility with nameplate capacity of up to 12 megawatts as measured in alternating current generation capacity at land identified as such. The undersigned, in his capacity as town manager of the town of Farmville, Virginia, does hereby certify on behalf of the town, 1, pursuant to section 15.2-2316.7A of the Code of Virginia, the applicant has given the town written notice of its intent to locate a solar project in the town, and the applicant of the town are negotiating a siting agreement in accordance with state law. So 23.16.7 states, the title is Negotiation Siting Agreement. Any applicant of a solar project or energy storage product shall give the host locality written notice of the applicant's intent to locate in such locality and request a meeting. Such applicant shall meet, discuss, and negotiate a siting agreement with such locality. We've done that. We're doing that. If the town and applicant agree upon the terms and conditions of the siting agreement, the town will schedule a public hearing pursuant to subsection A 15.2-2204 of the Code of Virginia for the purposes of considering of such siting agreement. That's the traditional code section for having a public hearing for different matters. If a majority of the town council approve the siting agreement, then pursuant to section 15.2-2316.9C of the Code of Virginia, by virtue of the town's approval of the siting agreement, the project is deemed to be substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan of the town, thereby satisfying all requirements of section 15.2-2232 and discharging the town planning commission from any obligation to approve the project pursuant to 2232A of the Code of Virginia. So I'll read you 16.19C. And it states, approval of a siting agreement by the local governing body in accordance with subsection B of 15.2-2316.8 shall deem the solar project or energy storage project to be substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan of the host locality, thereby satisfying the requirement of 15.2-2232. So the answer to that question is, if you all agree to the siting agreement that the town and the solar company and the two attorneys agree to, then we will be in compliance of 2232 and there will be no issue with the project.
Thank you for that very wordy response.
So we plan to move forward with a public hearing on...
Sir, excuse me, sorry. Quick question. Dealing with substantial compliance with the comprehensive plan, that's important, correct, according to everything you just read? Does the comprehensive plan mention anything about solar facilities? That's what I'm trying to get at, is like, it's got to be in substantial compliance with the comprehensive plan. I don't recall reading anything in our comprehensive plan about solar facilities.
I don't know that I'm following you.
What does
So-
substantial compliance mean?
I mean, we can wait for Mr. Elder to come back. I mean, he's He's not here, but they're both in agreement with what I just provided you. But I think you should, that should be a question that he answers for you.
All right, do we have any other questions concerning the update on Planning Commission? Not hearing any. Mr. Davis, you have your town manager's report?
The only thing I have is spring cleanup is Monday, May 6th. And we're getting ready to have some, I'll be announcing several dates. You know, we just had telecommunicators week last month. At the regular meeting, I'll give you some other ones, but for right now, National Fallen Firefighters Day is May 5th. So just to remember those that are in the fire service that have dedicated their time and lives to that. And then I'll do police and public works at the next meeting, Mayor, and give you those dates. But other than that, for right now, that's all I have.
Spring cleaning, May 6th. Everybody get ready. I'll go around the table for any comments from council before closed session. Mr. Hardy?
I'm good.
Mr. Hunter?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Mr. Yolen?
One more question. Do we need to approve Mr. McCulloch or anything here before we go to the next phase? Do we need a show of hands or anything?
I took it as, well, I would just take it to public hearing in June.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Parrott?
I'm good.
Mr. Dwyer?
Not a thing.
Mr. Reed?
I just want to remind you about the small town conference that will be held Virginia Municipal League in Abington, June 9th and 10th. If anybody interested in attending.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. The only comments I have, Mr. Chief Ellington, where are we on fundraising at this time? Yeah. Oh, nice. So Chief reports that there's enough money raised so far to get his head shaved, but we still need some money to get town manager Mr. Davis's head shaved. So keep contributing to a worthy cause. Ms. Julie Moore is handling the funds for that. So I'm sure everybody's seen the articles in the paper where we're trying to raise funds to look out for one of our own, and we appreciate all of your efforts in doing so. And we're really looking forward to Chief and hopefully Mr. Davis with a shaved head. On a personal front, I will say next week I'll spend 2 days in D.C. before our next meeting. It's about 150 CEOs, federal agency heads, governors, and congressional representatives will be in an invitation-only executive forum, and somehow I'm the only mayor on the principal invitee list. So I will be there representing Farmville as we talk about the $1.1 trillion outdoor recreation industry, something that is near and dear to my heart, and that I know that folks know we endeavor to provide great outdoor recreation here in Farmville. So I'd say that not to toot my horn, but to say that if you have any issues or any things you would like me to advocate for when I'm in that room where things happen, let me know before I head that way, and I will do the people's business. With that said, now move to closed session. Mr. Yolen, will you read us in, please?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Town of Farmville Council convene in closed meeting pursuant to the Code of Virginia and in accordance with provisions of paragraph 8.3 of section 2.2-3711 for the discussion and consideration of the acquisition of real property for the public purpose or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Yolen?
Yep.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. And I don't believe there'll be any actionable items, but we'll be out shortly after the closed session. Thank you.
Whereas, ready?
Yes, Mr. Yule.
Okay, here we go. Whereas the Farmville Town Council is convened in closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in the accordance with the provisions of Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Farmville Town Council that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Farmville Town Council hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meetings requirements by Virginia law were discussed in a closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Farmville Town Council.
Second.
Motion and second, Ms. McKay?
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Yolen?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
All right, we have any other business to come before this council in the work session? Not hearing any, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, thank you.